Next mistake, you don't prepare well for interviews. You got to remember that interviewing is a staged, contrived event. It is not real. I paraphrase this, Churchill talking about democracy, it sucks, but it's the best we've got. Now, he said it a little more eloquently than that, but that's what interviewing is. Interviewing is a staged, contrived event. Now, you can complain about that all you want, but that's the way it is, and you better get used to it. Your ability to interview is more important than your ability to do the job. How many of you have worked with people that show up on the job and 3 weeks later you're going, who is this? Where did this dude come from? Dude. Where did they come from? Man, this old boy's dumber than a box of rocks. Where did he come? He interviewed well. Okay? Well, look, you can complain about it, but that's the reality. So you best learn to interview well. It's a numbers game. We've emphasized that. And you'd better be ready to get rejected, refused, lied to, stomped on, cheated, done in every way you can be, and you can't pay any attention to it. You just got to move right on. But interviewing, if you can't wake up at 3 in the morning and give a 20-minute presentation on yourself, a rote presentation on why I'm good and why you ought to hire me, you ain't doing your homework. You got to be able to go in and say, here's what I can do for you because here's what I've done for others. Now, you've got to know who you are interviewing with. This is really important. If you are interviewing with a hiring authority with pain, that is the person who, if they don't get somebody hired, gets stuck with doing the job. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about pain. If you are interviewing with human resources, screeners, third party, anybody, you got to realize that they are putting their ego in front of you being hired. They are more concerned about how they look to the hiring authority than they're concerned about how you look to the hiring authority. Now, I have many friends, some of them good friends, that are in the HR departments. They're wonderful people for the most part. But you got to realize that if you're applying to the HR department, most of the people in HR are more concerned about how they look to the hiring authority than how you look. Now, you can't do anything about that. But when you go into the interviewing process with other than the hiring authority with pain, you've got to make sure that you present yourself as pristinely as you possibly can. The hiring authority, for the most part, is going to know what I call the margin, what they can get away with, experience and background-wise. Third-party screeners, HR, they don't know it as well. Now, if they've been in the company for a while and they know the hiring authority, that may be. But just be mindful of that when you go in for an interview with those people, they don't have the same sense of urgency that the hiring authority does or that you do. Just be mindful of that. Now, the next mistake is you don't sell yourself in the interview. The purpose of the interview is for you to sell yourself to the next interview. Don't give me this stuff of, well, the purpose of the interview is for me to find out if I'm interested in this job. There are 43 other people that you're competing with. You are trying to get in front of all of them. You sell yourself as hard as you possibly can. When you get to the offer stage, then you can talk about whether it's a job fit or not. But until then, it is a one-way street. You've got to practice, practice, practice. You have to develop a features, advantages, and benefits value presentation on yourself, on what you can do for them that the 43 others they're going to talk to can't. And they're talking to that many. And you've got to have that down just like the morning rosary. You better be able to say it and say it and say it and give it to as many people as you possibly can. You've got to interview very well. And the two questions that most people don't, we're going to get into in a minute, but is how do I stack up with the people that you are looking for? And what do I need to do to get the job? Now, there are 4 basic questions that you're going to be asked in the interviewing situation. Can you do the job? And that amounts to 20% of the hiring situation. Come back to that in a minute. Do we like you? Are you a risk? And can we work the money out? Now, you know what the easiest one of these four are? The last one. Can we work the money out? If you sell yourself well enough and you answer those first three, the fourth one takes care of itself. You don't even need to worry about it. I got a guy 2 weeks ago, a $50,000 salary increase over what the employer told me that they were going to pay because he went in and he sold himself so well. And I mean, this guy did it all right, and he's been out of work for a year and a half. He followed the instructions. I said, go do this, and he just did it. And got a $50,000. Now, I can't do that for everybody. I didn't really do it for the guy. The guy did it for himself, okay? But you've got to realize this is a sales situation. Can you do the job? I call it the 20% threshold. We get calls all the time. Tony, I saw that job you had on your website. I can do that job. No, no, no. It's whether or not you can sell yourself to the employer as to whether or not you can do the job. The fact that you can do the job has nothing to do with your ability to get it. Hey, look, I'd make the best president of the United States this country has ever seen. Just give me the job. I know I can do it. We'll set them straight, set them right, but I'm not going to get it because my track record and experience doesn't warrant it. Do we like you? 40% of a hiring decision. I have never, since 1973, ever seen an employer hire a qualified candidate that they didn't like. And I've had bunches of them that have said, Tony, that's the most qualified candidate that we interviewed, but we didn't like him or her. Just didn't fit into our organization. They're not going to hire who they don't like. Now, what does that mean? It means you have to be likable. What does that mean? Is if you're in IT or you're in accounting, you need to learn to sell yourself. I know it's not your nature necessarily, but you need to be likable. Okay? People don't get that often. Are you a risk? Oh my. I've never interviewed a candidate in all the 24,000 that I've interviewed that ever thought they were a risk. Every one of us is some kind of risk. If you've owned your own company, been the president of your own firm, been a CEO, been out of work for 6 months, out of work a year, just coming back into the workforce, had 4 jobs in the last 3 years, whatever, you've got risks on the part of the employer. These people are buying like anybody else. They're comparing you with the 43 other people they're talking to. They want to maximize your experience and background and minimize their risk. You need to know what risks you have